Do SPIFs work? So SPIFs, classic acronym for Special Performance Incentive Fund. Do SPIFs work? So SPIFs do work. And I'm a proponent of SPIFs as fill in the gap type of ideas, where you came up with a sales compensation plan design in Q3 or Q4 of 2021, where you're trying to pay reps all through 2022. I believe the company should be more nimble and agile around sales compensation plan design, but the stark reality is for 95% of companies, it's an annual planning process and they're somewhat locked into that plan because they don't have the data to make the changes when they want to or when they need to. And so they fill in the gaps, right? Fill in the gaps with sales contests and SPIFs.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, absolutely, SPIFs work. I think they can be a great tool for driving focus on, specific objectives for a short period of time. I think, I've personally seen the impact of when they're done right. And I think, at times it can be an outsized impact relative to the actual spend.
Can they be effective? Absolutely. But here's some of my criteria for effectiveness. One, I believe that all SPIFs should be self-funding. You shouldn't just be giving money to reps to make up for, to their total target pay because market conditions have changed. And if you think about the year we're in right now, we see inflationary pressures. We see a strengthening dollar against other currencies. We see continued supply side shocks in the marketplace. They're going to impact the macroeconomics, and some industries are going to be hit harder than others. And so should you just throw money at your reps? Well, my answer is no, right? The idea of SPIF should be self-funding. If you spend $1 on an incentive plan, you at bare minimum, want to get that dollar back, and hopefully you're getting a many times multiple on that investment. The second, criteria for successful SPIF for me is that it must have a finite time period. Once you start paying somebody to do something, incentivizing somebody to do a particular behavior, it almost instantly becomes what I'll categorize as hygiene. It's now expected. And at the end of that SPIF program, you're going to get some demotivation through loss aversion. You're giving somebody something and then you're taking it away at the end. So at the very beginning, you need to communicate to that time frame of how long it's going to last.
There's sometimes where the ROI perhaps doesn't really make sense. And so it's, the reward for this SPIF at the end of the day is hardly worth my effort. So what's the point of it? Right. So I think sometimes, it could be like, especially I've seen in my career sales contests for a new TV, and it's, from a perspective of a rep, they're going, well, this TV I can easily buy on my own if I just make my regular sales anyways. And then I think lastly, the one I always think about is these kind of sandbagging phenomenon, where if they can predict that these are rolling out with high frequency, they know they can just manipulate their sales to match the time period of the SPIF. And so it's actually not doing a whole lot. And I guess lastly, if I think more about it, it's the fact often the SPIFs are sometimes structured in a way that they just kind of replicate what the plan's already doing. And so, what is the actual incentive here? This is what I was doing on a day-to-day basis before. All you're trying to do is get me to do the exact same thing, right? And so what's the point of it at the end of the day?
I think there's a few things that can make them go wrong. If you have too many of them at the same time, they can detract from the core incentive program, and focus becomes unclear. If you don't provide clear and ongoing tracking and visibility, they become a lot less effective. So, if I roll out a SPIF, but then no one knows what their actual performance is until the SPIF period is over, and I just get, some dollars in my bank account instead of constantly kind of being reminded and seeing my incremental earnings in real time. I think those are very different things from a motivation perspective. And then just like any incentive, if you have bad design, you can drive the wrong behavior, end up significantly overspending.
What I have seen in the past, some other companies, is there may be really good ideas around the SPIF. Oh, we really need to move this particular module, and we should really SPIF on on the sales team and others who are customer facing, pushing that particular module. But the ability to execute on it, in some organizations is relatively low. And so the window of time of when it makes sense to really push that particular item versus when the company is going to be able to execute on even the communication, right, of being clear about exactly how the program works, and then how they're going to get paid on the SPIF and when it's going to happen, and then being able to deliver on that. I think in many organizations that are growing quickly, maybe a little bit short-staffed to just deliver on kind of the baseline comp program, et cetera, and sales operations activities, it's just difficult to throw something like that as a one-off into the workflow and expect it to go really well. And so I think these ideas get killed sometimes because operationally companies just can't execute on them.
I'm confident SPIFs work. I'm confident SPIFs can be effective. I don't think people use them wisely. I think people use them often to fix something that's broken within their plan rather than go fix that plan, or to fix a performance management issue as opposed to create a new SPIF. I think people need to use them wisely. So making sure it is, SPIFs should be designed to drive a particular short-term behavior that perhaps isn't necessarily addressed or tackled within your core compensation plan. But they should also use them sparingly. So that's twice or 3 times a year, ideally no more. And with a certain dollar amount that doesn't take over the base plan. So typically roughly 5% of your total sales incentives should be dedicated to SPIFs. I think you can use them effectively, but you got to use them wisely. You got to use them sparingly.
You do need to design it where everybody can win. Everybody gets to participate if they meet the criteria of the SPIF. If it's an upsell, an additional product, a particular gross margin, one more sale than they had last month, give everybody the opportunity to participate and win. I've seen tons of SPIF programs and sales contests where the same 3-4 people win every single month, every single quarter. That's not super motivating to everybody else in the sales force. Spread the money out, give everybody a chance to do the right thing. If you design it as self-funding, it pays for itself regardless of how many people earn on the SPIF.
As much as possible, try to plan SPIFs out in advance. In a lot of instances, I think SPIFs can be an urgent reaction to a problem. But other times, we know well in advance that we might be, launching a new product, or we might have seasonality in the business, and these are all things that can be planned for. And if we, think about that and think about SPIF planning a little bit more holistically in the context of overall sales comp planning, we can structure it so that reporting, administration, everything becomes a little bit easier when it's not just. When SPIFs aren't only being used as sort of knee-jerk reactions.
You should be able to model out what a SPIF will produce and the effectiveness of it, and also retroactively assess how well certain SPIFs are doing so you learn for kind of future SPIFs and programs. I think you need to see over time the amount of dollars you're putting towards it, how you're structuring it, whether that's driving the right behavior.
And then the last thing, right? With SPIFs, you have to provide real-time, everyday, communication of where people stand relative to how much money they're going to make in that SPIF. There's not much point in creating a SPIF program. People get excited about it. You've explained to them exactly what they need to do to earn the money. Maybe you pull reports from your CRM to show them which accounts they could go after to earn this extra money. And then they're off to the races. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks go by. If they haven't seen a report to say, hey, you did 3 or 4 of the things we asked you to do, here's how much money you just made, well, then there's no point in doing it, right? You have to reinforce the behaviors that you want the people to do. You have to create a strong reward, and either you give them the cash or you create a proxy of cash through reporting and visualizations and show them on a daily basis Here's how much money you've earned. So they'll continue to get back out there and do the same thing again and again and maximize their earnings on that SPIF program. So yeah, SPIFs can be successful. They have to be well designed to do so. I see a lot of companies throw a lot of money down the tubes and they kind of say, hey, these things don't work. Well, they're not doing it right.